On this edition of City Talk, say hello to Dodi Byrne, Rebecca Kiernan, and Tara Matthews. Straight ahead on City Talk. Welcome to City Talk, where we try to find out what are these people who work for the city, what do they do all day? This person hasn't just been doing some work all day, she's been doing work for the city of Pittsburgh for more than 2 decades, serving in the Department of Special Events, and she's about to walk away because she can. Dodi Byrne is here. Dodi, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
So you're program coordinator. That's a pretty wide encompassing job description. You could be programming just about anything.
It is. We program most of the city events that we do, our foot races, our concerts, community festivals, movies in the park, and there's other coordinators in the office, and each of these events kind of get divided up over the course of the year for each coordinator to be the lead coordinator on that particular event.
But it's not just a matter of booking the entertainment. There's a lot of physical labor involved.
Oh yeah, I mean, that's just getting things lined up to the event, and then you work the day of the event, you set everything up, you man the event and oversee everything, and then at the end you tear it all down and make it all go away again.
Because I, as you know, had the privilege of emceeing the Bach, Beethoven, and Brunch event, which is an outdoor concert. But all I did was show up and MC it and leave, and you guys did all the real work. So that was very unfair of me, I thought.
But it's part of the job. It's part of what I've loved doing for all these years, you know, putting those things together and scheduling things. It's like a jigsaw puzzle, putting it together, and then when you go to the event, you see everything and how the public, you know, enjoys it, and you know that it was all worth all the work that it took.
Well, so you're an event planner in large part.
Pretty much, yeah.
And if you don't plan it well, everybody gets mad and says the city doesn't know what they're doing. So that's a lot of pressure, I would assume.
It is a little. It is a lot of pressure, but I've always felt that like success is in the details. If you get all the details right, everything looks good, and people don't even know why it looks so good. But it's all those small details that make it.
Are there any unusual events that you've had to put together over the years that stand out?
Well, there's, I mean, not really unusual, but there's ones that just come up and they're like a one-time thing that I loved being part of the Unity gathering after the terrible shooting out at the Tree of Life. We did a wonderful gathering in Point State Park. Tom Hanks was there. Michael Keaton was there.
I was there.
Were you?
In the rain.
So many.
It was horribly raining, but the event was still awesome, and all the speakers were awesome.
It was.
I'm impressed that you were a part of that.
It was, yeah, and it was very inspiring in spite of the horrible weather. But so many people showed up, and we were like 11:45 when it was supposed to start. We're looking, and we didn't see anybody. Within that 15-minute window, everybody showed up, and it just really was an awesome experience. I really was glad to be part of that.
Sure, that's definitely unique. Any other one-time events that come to mind?
We have things that come up that are one-times, like when the mayor does press conferences or groundbreakings, and those are always nice. Ribbon cuttings are really nice, especially when they're like on playgrounds, and the kids participate in cutting the ribbon. And my favorite event has always been Junior Great Race. I've always loved the Junior Great Race and coordinating
What's so great about the Junior Great Race?
The kids. It's a very relaxed atmosphere because most of these foot races, these are racers that are very important to them. Their timing, their scoring, how they're doing, what they place in and that. And that's not there at the junior. It's just run around the park in a circle, and everybody gets, all the kids get a ribbon, and all the kids get a little backpack, goodie bag with stuff in it. And it's just so good to watch these kids all over the park, and when they take all the toys out that we get them and put in their bags, I've always enjoyed that event.
So despite the fact that you've been doing this for more than 2 decades, you seem like someone who never got bored with her job.
It doesn't let you get bored. It doesn't let you get bored because even if you're doing the same event every year, each year it's a little different. Something may change, something may be done to improve it. New people come on board. You meet new people from the community that, you know, because I also do the community festival grant. So those groups, people that oversee them, some will leave, new ones will come in, so you're meeting a whole lot of new people. Some of them I developed relationships that were on board since I started full-time in '97. So they're all the same program each year, but they're really not as each year goes by.
So you started under Mayor Murphy?
Yes. Yep.
And then you served under all the subsequent mayors, obviously, until Mayor Peduto.
Yeah.
Any big changes in the way special events were done, depending on who was in charge?
Well, this past couple years, it has really changed with Mayor Peduto. He's brought in different levels and positions and new people in, fresh blood in, and is revamping the way some of the programs were set up and some of the accounting and stuff like that. So it was a change the last couple years, but it was a change I think that needed to happen.
And what are you going to do with yourself since you're deciding to leave?
Oh, and I've been buying books that look interesting and DVDs and video games and making lists of projects around the house I'm going to do. So I'll be pretty busy.
Dodi Byrne, thank you so much for joining us on City Talk.
Thank you. I enjoyed it.
Let's meet some other folks when we come back in a moment. Stay with us.
I want to eat apples and bananas. I need to eat apples and bananas. Why can't I eat apples and bananas?
Support the Feeding America nationwide network of food banks to help provide meals to those in need. Join us at feedingamerica.org.
Welcome back to City Talk. We could all use a little more resilience, I would think, just as a general principle in life. And here is someone who works in resilience for the city of Pittsburgh, Rebecca Kiernan. Rebecca, welcome to City Talk.
Thanks, John.
Thanks so much for doing it.
Sure.
So that's a pretty broad but interesting term. I love it, actually. I mean, if you're one of those in charge of resilience, that seems like an important thing to be in charge of.
It's interesting. Yep.
So how do you define it as, just generally speaking, in terms of your job?
So we look at the shocks and stresses that the city faces. So shocks being those one-time events like a hurricane or an extreme weather event or a terrorist attack. And then we also look at stresses. So those are like the slow burning issues that erode the capacity of the city on a daily basis.
Would that include the ability of pedestrians and bicyclists and drivers to get along or not?
Yeah, so that could be a stress, thinking about like environmental degradation or poor air quality or social issues. So we look at shocks and stresses and how they impact the city and how we can bounce back from them or bounce forward. It's something that we look at.
What is one of the more interesting projects, at least to you, that you've worked on, and have you been able to make any progress? Because that seems like a huge responsibility. Everything that's wrong, and how do you make it right?
That's right. So it's hard to say no to projects because everything kind of gets thrown at our division. So we started out with a preliminary resilience assessment, which is a document, and you can read all of this online on our website. But we analyzed what the Pittsburgh shocks and stresses profile is, and then from that we developed a resilience strategy, which is a 12-year plan for us to address those issues. And you can read all of that on our website. So we have a list of projects that we have outlined that we.
Can you give us an example of one or two?
Yeah, so the first implementation project that came out of it is something called the Equity Indicators Report. And that came out, we had a second update to that document, which came out last week. So it looks at 80 different indicators citywide that measure us on equity, so how two groups compare against each other.
Oddly enough, I heard you quoted on the radio
nice.
on that just the other day. So that must be a very difficult assignment because you can't just wave your magic wand and make everything equitable.
Right.
How do you propose to go about helping to fix that at least?
Right. So a lot of what we've done so far, so we're kind of a new office. We started out on this process around 2015. And so a lot of what we've been doing are analyses and strategies, and now we're starting to get into the implementation phase. So we're the sustainability and resilience division.
Okay.
And so a lot of our projects are focused on, climate change and changing out our energy mix, electrification of vehicles.
So the mayor seems to be big on going green, so you help advise him on how to make the city greener.
Yep. Yeah, that's right.
And that I assume is going pretty well, or at least when I see his tweets, it looks like
we're trying.
Things are being done.
We're trying. It's slow, and I think it's going to take more of a sea change than just coming from government. So there's a lot of work to be done for sure.
So you'll have to get all sorts of disparate groups together and get them to agree to go green.
Yeah, that's
or greener
right.
At least.
Right. So one of the projects that we have is we run the Western PA Energy Consortium. So we purchase the city's energy load along with PWSA and some universities and some other municipalities. So we try to group things together so that we can have a larger impact. So for example, in the Western PA Energy Consortium, we're now looking to transition or purchase local renewable energy so that, we're not purchasing from the dirty grid. We're now, having some sort of either a solar installation or a local wind installation that we can purchase energy from and reduce our carbon footprint.
Is it frustrating at all that you point out a lot of these things, even if you can make progress, might take time to make significant progress?
Yeah, definitely. And it's a little frustrating. So it feels like it's moving slowly, but I think that we're going to hit some sort of a critical mass where, we push all these projects forward and really have an impact.
How do you develop the skills to become a person of resilience, if you will?
My background is, my undergrad is in education. And then I transitioned to a master's in public policy focused on environmental policy. And then I was a sustainability coordinator for another local municipality and then kind of fell into resilience. So it seemed like an easy transition to go from, climate change mitigation and sustainability into thinking about adaptation and how will we be impacted by large global issues like climate change.
Do you run into much climate change denial, or are the people pretty much on board, but they just with varying degrees of participation?
Not so much in Pittsburgh. I wouldn't say that we've seen a lot of climate denial. I mean, we're seeing it in our weather patterns, right? We had like the wettest year on record last year. We spent $12 million in landslide cleanups.
Yeah, I don't know if I can blame it on these windy days we've been having, but
yeah,
wind has been crazy at times.
Right. So, I mean, I think people are starting to feel it. I would say more often we have groups who want us to be doing more in terms of climate mitigation. So we kind of deal with that opposite end of the spectrum, which is great.
So it sounds like you actually like your job.
Yeah, I like it.
What would you like to do going forward? Just more of the same and make progress faster?
Yeah, I think we're at a point where we've done a lot of strategies and analyses, and I think now's the time for implementation. So I'm hoping, with the next couple of budget cycles and some grant funding opportunities, we can start to get, solar panel installations in the ground or electric vehicle charging, or you can start to physically see some of those changes.
But finding the money to do even what you know is right is apparently can be tricky.
It's tricky, but there are ways to finance it. So energy efficiency, you're saving money on that. So there are, most of the projects that we can implement will have some sort of like a payback period. So
that's awesome. So you're going to save us all from climate change. I can't thank you enough. Maybe not single-handedly.
I don't know about that, but.
Well, you're doing great work, Rebecca Kiernan. Thank you so much for being on CityTalk.
Thanks for having me.
Let's meet some other interesting folks in a moment. Stay with us.
Patriotism. It inspires passionate debate. It's worn like a badge of honor with good reason, because it means love and devotion for one's country. But what really makes up this country of ours? It's the people. To love America is to love all Americans. This year, patriotism shouldn't just be about pride of country. It should be about love. Love beyond age, sexuality, disability, race, religion, and other labels. Because love has no labels.
Welcome back to City Talk. Say hello to Tara Matthews, who is a senior digital services analyst.
All right, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Does that mean you get to lord over the junior analysts?
I wish. No, actually, I don't.
Oh, bummer. I was hoping the title came with some...
with some seniority and
yes.
power.
But it is an interesting job, I'm sure. Tell us about that.
So my job really does not get summed up by my title. So digital services doesn't really mean much when you just look at it. My main position and my main job is to run the open data program. So I work with different departments. I work with the law department, and I also work with members of the WPRDC, the Western Pennsylvania Regional Data Center, which is a big mouthful, to actually get data that we collect in our day-to-day lives in the city and put it online in a way that people can actually use.
What's a practical way some people might use some of your data?
So one thing we developed was called Bird's Eye View. So my colleague Jeffrey Arnold put together an interactive map that shows things like 311 requests, permits, violations, police incidents, on a map. You can click on it, see what's going on, go to the 311 website, submit complaints, things of that nature. And that way, if you're not a statistician or a data expert, you can't really make much magic out of a spreadsheet. You can still see what's going on in your neighborhood.
So one of your challenges is to take what may be complicated, a
Right.
set of data, and simplify it for humans
Yes.
out there in city land.
Yes, like my way of thinking about it is democratizing data, because data is not really something that's really intuitive to everybody. I went to school to study data, and it's still not the easiest thing in the world for me to work with, but I want to make sure that everyone can use it, whether you're like a researcher, a council person, a member of the community. It has to be useful to you. Otherwise, there's no reason to really put it online.
That's interesting that you went to school to study data. I had
Yes.
one statistics course in college, and all I remember is you can make numbers say anything you want, or that was the supposed
is
lesson.
true.
So what did you learn about studying data, and how have you applied it to your job?
So when I went to school, I thought I was going to study political development. So my original study of practice was economic development in sub-Saharan Africa. But I thought to myself, maybe I should start developing the skills that I had. And I remember thinking—
That would have been a challenging effort, I'm sure.
But I remember in school, I was an economics major and a political science major, and I studied stats on the side. And I realized that those departments, while they work very closely together, they don't really seem to understand each other very well. And so I thought that was a place where I could fit in. And now looking back at that, it makes a lot of sense that I ended up in the role that I have now, because I take data and try to make it understandable for people who put it into practice. And that's really, I guess, a fulfillment of what I was thinking I might do 5 years ago. So it's kind of
But
surprising.
you had a bit of a surprise. It's sort of a different direction than you thought originally?
Yes. So I remember telling my mother, I was like, I think I want to change the world and move back to Tanzania. That's where I did my research in
Oh, no
undergraduate.
kidding.
Yes. I was in Karagwe, Tanzania, studying economic development out in a rural hospital. And my mother said, here's a good way to change the world. Go get a job. And I remember being
Very mom-like thing
so
to say.
hurt by that, but it was true. It was true. There's ways for me to fulfill that passion. I still work in that space in my personal life, but on the job, I really want to take data and make it actionable and useful for people.
Where are you from originally?
I'm from Baltimore, Maryland area. I'm from Columbia, Maryland originally. I'm doing a nod to Baltimore with my flamingo earrings, but
And why is that a nod to Baltimore?
so John Waters was a famous
Right.
filmmaker from Baltimore, and Pink Flamingos is one of his most famous films, and it's like become part of Baltimore's iconic imagery. So I like to.
Not everybody can mix Baltimore with Pittsburgh and make it
Yes.
a look, so good for you.
To be fair, I've been living here for almost 10 years,
Okay.
so Pittsburgh's a big part of me now.
What's the difference between the two cities?
I actually think they're very similar. I think Baltimore and Pittsburgh are both smaller cities. Baltimore's not Midwest, obviously, but I think they both have that reputation that they're coming back from. They're both becoming hubs of technology. They both have a strong educational and medicinal industry influence.
And arguably they were both going down the tubes, but now they're both coming
Yes,
back.
yes,
Yeah.
very much so.
You sound like you actually like your job.
I love my job. I think every day is really different. I like the fact that I can actually go out and interact with people. I've done things like go to community meetings. I've filled potholes.
You filled potholes?
Filled potholes by hand. We're tracking to see how long it takes to fill a pothole. So
How long does it take?
it takes approximately 8 seconds
Oh.
to fill a pothole. It's just that there's a lot of administrative work that goes into filling a pothole.
But don't you have to pack it down for a couple of seconds? Or?
Well, what you do is you take the material, you throw it on there, you roll it down with a roller, you tamp it down, back over it with the truck, and you're done. It's pretty quick. It's just that it takes a while to get from request to someone's desk to the truck. And that's what we were trying to figure out, is where
How to streamline that?
Right, where that request goes before it gets to the point that they're actually filling the pothole on the street.
And have you figured that out?
It's a work in progress.
Okay. But people think that nobody's ever working on that, and you're
Right,
actually working on
right. It's definitely a priority.
it. You'd recommend work in government to your fellow humans?
I like being a public servant. I like local government specifically because you're really close to the residents. I think the further up you get and the larger the bureaucracy gets, the further away you get from actual people. And so I like that I can go out to meetings, and I like that I can be a member of the community and help advocate for the type of work that I'm doing.
Are you in demand for the kind of data that people want you to analyze, or are you picking your own projects, or a little of both?
So when we first started, we did something called the Open Data Forum. And so that was where we polled everybody. We had a voting contest, like what types of data that we keep would you like to see published? We got a lot of great ideas, and that kind of focused where we want to start with open data. From then, we started thinking about what should our priorities be. There are some that we get requests for all the time. So that's 311 data, police data, code violations data, things of that nature. So that was the next step. And then after that, it's a matter of thinking about what's easy to get, what's worth getting, what requires a lot of data structure, a lot of a change in software, and then trying to map out like a course of attack after that. So at this point, we're really thinking is every time we buy new software or I meet with a new department, I think about what do you collect that we can publish on the Open Data Center and how do we get to it?
Are you working on anything right now you'd like to tell us about?
So we're working on publishing contractor data. We are publishing public art and monument data, and we're also working on a few things that I have to keep secret for now.
Secret squirrel stuff?
Yes.
James Bond stuff?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, one of the things with open data is that there's a balance. So we want to protect the identity of the people who live here, but we also want the data to be specific enough that somebody can actually do useful analysis with it. So if it's a big aggregate, say for example, these are how many assault crimes took place in the city in 1 month. We don't tell you the neighborhood, we don't tell you the time or the date. That's not really that useful if you're trying to actually map trends. But we also have to think about the victims in the situation, like the legality of ongoing investigations, things like ongoing court cases. And so we really have to work closely with the law department and the associated department to make sure that we meet that balance of both being useful but also privatized.
Sounds like it can be really complicated, but as we already covered, you live to make the complicated simple enough for people to understand.
I mean, that's the best part of my job.
Tara Matthews, thanks so much for doing the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Nice to meet somebody who really loves their job that much.
Thank you.
That's City Talk. We'll see you next time.